It's KC 101. Time for another edition of Saturday with Seniors. Big thank you going out to our sponsor, FCCB, our local branches in Wellsboro, Mansfield, and Blossburg, sponsoring today's Saturday with Seniors. And they've been supporting our community for over 150 years. Today, Paul Bozzo joins us. And hello, Paul. How are you?
Hey, Kevin. Nervous. How are you?
Well, that's okay. You just relax. It's just me and you and a couple people eavesdropping and stuff. Well, you were a teacher, weren't you?
Yep. I taught art over in Mansfield at the elementary school, 31 years.
So you must have had literally hundreds of students, so don't be nervous. Those hundreds of students are listening to you right now.
I tried to figure it out once, and I think I knew 4,500 names.
Really? That is unbelievable.
As the art teacher, you can K through 6 every year.
Pretty much, yeah. Anyone who grew up through those time years and went through years. Which school did you teach at?
It was Warnell Miller's the name of it.
Yeah. So let's go back. How old are you, Paul? When were you born?
1946.
1946. So what are your earliest memories? What do you remember? Do you remember your first day of school? Do you remember the other end of things, being a student?
Wow.
Or the beginning of school?
I remember being sent to the corner in first grade.
What did you do?
Well, when we were bad, it just meant we were talking to our neighbors.
Yeah.
They were pretty strict back then.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Teachers were a lot more strict with stuff, so...
Yeah.
What were, now, if kids got in a little more trouble in school, did they crack the knuckles back then with the rulers, or was that not near there?
It wasn't in my purview. I was never that bad.
Okay, but it did happen to others.
I think so. I'm trying to picture rulers, but then the interesting thing in first grade, one night in the middle of the winter, the school burnt down.
Wow, I didn't know that.
This is out in Port Allegheny, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So we had a short vacation, and they rounded up all the meeting halls at the churches. Mm-hmm. I think I finished my first grade in the Catholic Church meeting hall. But then, third grade, we ended up above the stable in a rich person's mansion. There was still hay in the room the first day of school.
Yeah.
Because that was the hay mow.
Luckily, nobody had any allergies to that. That wouldn't have worked too well. Right. So is that where you grew up, in Port Allegheny, where you were born?
Right. I was born in a neighboring town hospital, but I grew up in Port Allegheny.
Yeah.
With all my cousins and my 2 sisters.
And what did you want to be when you were a kid? If someone asked you in third grade, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Oh, you won't believe this.
Yeah.
I guess in junior high, when I started listening to the radio, I wanted to be a DJ.
Really? Well, here you are on the radio. Your career's come full circle.
But I'm not glib enough to be a DJ.
Well, I'm not good enough to be an art teacher, so we all have our skills.
Good point.
So what were some of the things you did for fun back? So you were born in 1946, so you were in elementary school in the early 1950s. When you were out of school, what type of things, activities did you do? This is before the days of, did you have a TV then?
No.
Okay.
We didn't get a TV till I was in 4th grade. Every snowfall, we lived on a nice sloping hill in town, and we would get our sleds out, and there'd be 10 to 20 kids sliding down that hill, jumping from sled to sled.
Yeah.
And I think because it was a 2-factory town, most of the people that lived in town walked to work, and they didn't bother to plow the roads very often. The worst thing that would happen in the winter was the cinder truck would come by. And
wreck your sled run.
Yep.
I remember that as a kid, too. Darn that cinder truck.
We'd have a couple of days, usually, before they got around. Yeah.
Well, that's neat. So what else did you do for free time? Sledding, which I think kids are missing out on that. That's a great exercise, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, some kids still sled, but I think that for me, that pastime, every time it snowed, I would grab my sled.
It was all the kids in the neighborhood. You knew everybody. I don't know. Now it just seems like everybody's encapsulated.
Yeah.
And as we get older, we're kind of encapsulated in our homes, too.
Yeah, pandemic didn't help either with that.
Right. Oh, geez, exactly. In the summers, we were blessed with a rock deposit. I'm talking 3 rocks the size of houses, but it was way up on this hill, 3 hills back. And I think that was the beginning of my running career. I was a runner in high school because we would get up there to the top of the hill, and then we'd run the rest of the way back so we could play our cowboys and Indians. Uh-huh. These big rocks made like a canyon in between them. Yeah, it was a great place for
your imagination to run wild and explore. And
yep, there were 2 caves. One was named Ice Cave because it was quite sheltered, and it was a long cave. It was actually a pile of rocks with a path through it. Mm-hmm. The other cave was called Dead Man's Cave.
That really made it sound like you were doing pirate stuff here.
Oh, yeah. And who dared to go to the end of that?
Yeah.
That was right at the bottom of the biggest rock. Another rock that was very famous was Bird Rock. It had a stylized carving of a bird on the front of it, but it was not quite a vertical slope. It had a little bit of a slant, and we would climb up that with our toe holds and our finger holds.
Uh-huh. And hope nothing went.
Nobody ever fell. I don't know if I could do it now. It's only about 15 or 20 feet to the top.
Yeah.
And then you climb over, and it was more or less, well, not quite level on top, but no problem. Now I'm afraid of heights. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm afraid of getting hurt. It's not so much heights.
Good one.
That's where my fear comes from.
Yeah.
So did you do any sports in school or anything?
When I played Little League, the high school history teacher was the coach, so he had the summers off. But our league, we just had one team in town, and we would have to go to the neighboring towns. He would borrow this big truck, like for hauling hay, and we'd all sit in the back of that truck, in that truck bed, and drive to Shingle House, Eldred, Coudersport, all those towns over there. When we got older and played Babe Ruth baseball and Legion, we still had to have a working bike because that field was outside of town. It's called Moose Park. And we had to bicycle up the hill right along Route 6. And then we had to take the turn for Emporium. And out there another quarter of a mile is where the baseball field was. And I thought about it and thought about it. I cannot remember my parents or anybody's parents ever driving us to any event.
You just got yourself there on bicycles.
Yeah.
Now you go by the schools, and there might be 2-3 kids who take a bicycle to school, which I think is a shame.
Right, and there's a million cars lined up, at least in Mansfield. I think you'd be ridiculed to death if your parents picked you up at school. You know how kids are in junior high.
Yeah.
Yeah, jeez.
So what was your first job? We'll jump ahead a little bit here.
Jump ahead.
Part-time work.
No, my very first job was in elementary school. They didn't hire any crossing guards. So they picked 5 kids from 6th grade and 5 kids from 5th grade. And we would work every other week. We would be the crossing guards.
So they entrusted you, someone who never drove a car before, with people's lives and stopping cars.
Little kids.
Yes.
And our only recourse was a pole about probably 7 or 8 feet long with a red flag at the end of it. And when kids came to cross the street, we'd hold that out across the road so they'd be safe. So cars would know to stop. But the best thing about those poles in the winter, when the snowplows went by and rolled up some of those clumps of snow, you'd stick your pole through that clump, get it up in the air, and just fling it at the kid at the other corner.
You invented your own fun.
So that was my first job. We didn't get paid for that. After doing it for 2 years, I think we got out of class a little bit early because kids went home for lunch too. So we didn't just do morning before school and evening after school or afternoon.
Did the school serve lunch, or everybody had to go home for lunch? I'm hearing this from other people too. They walked home from school.
They did serve lunch then, but the kids that lived close enough, we had a whole hour for lunch. And I think my mother was happy to have me home at lunchtime. Not sure, but I think
in your mind, you'd like to think so.
Yep. And the next job, there was a bird farm down on the flats. And I got a job there working for 50 cents an hour.
This is still in the Port Allegheny area?
This is still in Port Allegheny. They had 24 heater type thing, maybe 4 or 5 feet around. We could put about 250 chicks under that. But before you had 250 chicks, you had to gather 250 eggs. They had big covered fields. And every morning and near the end of work in the afternoon, we'd walk through that field with baskets and pick up all the eggs. And then they would go in an incubator, and we would grab them out of the incubator, handfuls of these baby pheasants, and put them in a cardboard box and carry them across this road to the brood house where they first grew up. It was about a 10 by 10 room, and there were 20 of them along an aisle. And you'd put them in there. They would live there for 6 weeks. After the first week, they'd open a door so they'd go out on a run, a small covered pen, or they could run outside. We did sneak a few pheasant eggs home to try cooking them. They're smaller than chicken eggs and a little bitter, but pheasant eggs are very pretty because they came in different shades of green and brown and bluish colors. So that was actually kind of fun. Of course, when you're walking with the boss picking up eggs, looking in the grass, and you step on one and it goes crack, the boss kind of looks at you.
We'll just take that out of your pay, sir.
My 50 cents an hour.
Wow, I can't imagine working for 50 cents an hour.
Yeah.
So did you have any other jobs between that and your teaching job, or where does your career go from there?
Yeah, and then for some reason became a college dropout, and I came back to Port Allegheny. The job I could find was being a draftsman in Olean, New York. What would that be, 1965, 66? They were converting their whole inventory so they could put it on computers. Mm-hmm. So my first weeks...
So you were working computers in 1965?
Well, it was probably very rudimentary, but somehow
I would say so.
That would keep track of it. So I spent the first couple of months erasing numbers off of a mechanical drawing. This outfit was Clark Brothers, but they made all these impellers and all kinds of drawings for how to machine all these different parts.
So you would take those off and computerize the numbers?
Oh, no, I was busy erasing numbers and writing another number on there. That's all I did all day long, page after page. But I was pretty good at printing numbers, and this is long before CAD, which would do the own writing. So I worked up, after a couple of months, I was doing the customer drawings because I could print more neatly than some of the other guys. And this was all for the grand sum of $2 an hour.
Oh, that's a lot more than 50 cents an hour. So now we're quadrupling your salary.
Yep, and every half year, I think we got a 50-cent raise. So I think when I met my wife and went back to college, I think I was making almost $100 a week.
But everything costs less then, too.
I got to point out, yes, gasoline was about 25 cents a gallon.
I don't know if you remember what you paid for your house or your rent back then, but I'm sure it was not all that much either.
I remember some people built a new house. We talked about it when they said the total cost of building a new house for them was $24,000. I thought, well, that's unattainable. I'll never be able to do that. 24,000.
Well, it was back then, because certainly numbers have changed. So at what point did you come to Wellsboro? Is that for the teaching job that brought you to this area, to Tioga County?
Well, when I met my wife and we got serious, and I asked her father for her hand in marriage, he said, well, she's getting a college degree. I think that you should have one, too. You're going to be married.
You're going to be good enough for my wife, or my daughter's daughter, yeah.
So she was going to Mansfield, so I got into Mansfield, and that's where I got my teaching degree in art.
So he gave you some good advice then, I guess.
Yeah.
So where were you living in Mansfield when you first came here?
The first apartment we lived in was kind of an old-fashioned apartment building. It had 2 apartments on the bottom floor, 2 on the second floor, and an attic apartment. And in the cramped basement, the guy even had a washing machine and a dryer for us. Mm-hmm. So we lived there for 1 year. The man that owned it, he bought the paint so we could repaint the whole apartment we had in pinks and yellows and bright blues. And I was an art teacher. I wish I had pictures of some of the, oh well.
Yeah.
At least it was freshly painted, but it was bright.
So what are your early memories? You came to town to Mansfield. Remember some of your favorite restaurants and things that are no longer around? What are some of the things you miss from, we're going back 60 years ago. You came to Mansfield almost.
Yeah, 1967. My wife graduated in 69.
Yep, so 55 years ago here.
Right.
Mansfield was a different place.
We had a Dutch pantry, which is now the Borough Building. The Dutch pantry.
That's where the Edgewood restaurant became later, right?
Oh, could have.
Yeah.
But
I think it was
every time I sold a painting or something for like $10 or $15, we'd go out to
the Dutch pantry. That was your...
Yeah, and they had ice cream and apple dumplings. That was the best dessert they had. That's the only thing I remember they made.
You have other store memories in Mansfield going down? Where'd you get your groceries back when you came here? What was your grocery store?
Oh, the grocery store is now the parking lot for First Citizens. It was at A&P.
Yep.
And there was that giant A&P plant up in Big Flats that turned into be a vacant building.
Yep.
It was huge. But anyway, yeah, I can remember shopping in that store. Wow.
On Main Street, you had clothing stores and shoe stores and I don't know if there was any antique shops or real estate offices, but it was a whole different set of stuff before the days of Walmart coming to town.
Right. We had a men's store. That's where I bought most of my clothes. And there was I can't remember the name of the place.
T.W. Judge was down there too with appliances was a big one. Cole's Pharmacy on the corner would have been there then.
Yeah. I can remember sitting in the woman's store quite often while my wife picked out more teaching clothes. Although I don't want it to sound like we had a lot then. When my wife, when she was pregnant with our first child, she was still teaching, and she had 2 maternity outfits. She had to alternate wear to school. That was it. And my sister made one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not the time of plenty. Now we just seem so spoiled. There's just so much in the world.
Yeah, it seemed like when a job opened up, a lot of people applied for it. Like people stuck with their jobs longer. They were part of a team when they joined a company. And I mean, that's my feeling. Wasn't it more common for people in the 1960s to keep their job for more than a month?
Oh, wow.
Like they do now?
Yeah, the factory workers, I'd say on average, they work 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah, once you were in and they would stick with it and were afraid of losing their job. I mean, people back then were afraid of being fired because they didn't know if they'd get another job.
Right, and I don't think the government bailed out anybody.
Yeah.
As a teacher, if you tried to move to another school district, they wouldn't hire you except on the very first pay scale. And it would cost a lot of money to transfer.
So, yeah, moving, you start over again is what you were saying at the time.
Yeah, that was really tough. And I never saw my principal so happy as the day he found out we were buying a house. That meant we were staying.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what was school like when you were first a teacher? What were some of the changes that you saw along the way?
Oh, boy. I can name the boy. I won't. When it all changed, that was after about 15 years. There seemed to be hardly any problems, no problem children till that time. And his was a sad story. But I don't know if parents were more conscientious or had more time with their kids or what. They just seemed...
They seemed more involved and more with the schooling and what was going on in their homework and not relying on the teachers, but working with the teachers for the kids to learn more.
Right. It seemed like, at least when I was a kid, if you got in trouble at school and got spanked, I don't think I ever was, but if you did, you came home and got spanked again.
Yeah, you were more afraid of what was going to happen at home than what happened at school.
And then when this change happened, about midway through my thing, it seemed like if a kid got paddled at school, the parents were up in arms.
Yeah.
Don't you hit my kid? And it was like all of a sudden the teachers weren't in charge anymore.
Yeah. I mean, and I can see kind of both sides. It's your kid, and they don't want to, don't hit my kid. I get that. And then the other side of it, but there were definitely cause and effect too, because now kids realize they were.
Yeah, but then to try to remedy that, they sent a letter home, and you could opt out of, they called it corporal punishment. That was a euphemism for spanking. Yeah. A parent could opt out of it. One parent wrote back, and they misunderstood corporal for capital punishment. And they thought that was a
bit extreme.
But then some parents did write in, and they had to type up a list and give it to us special teachers, so we knew. I mean, I'm trying to remember spanking a kid, and I know I must have at the beginning, but I don't remember it.
You'd have to look up your reference guide to see if they were on like the list there or whatever.
And where do you put it so you can see it quick? Well, so that's when I changed. I painted Daffy Duck, suffering succotash duck, that weird one. I painted him in the one corner, and if somebody misbehaved, they had to go stand by Daffy Duck for 5 minutes.
A little time out with the duck, huh?
Yep, but they had to face our way, though, so they could still watch and know what was going on. And my last years, I got really soft, and if I sent somebody the duck, I'd go over and talk to them for 10 to 15 seconds, and then their time was up.
So when did you retire? How long ago from teaching?
I became a kid again in 2002.
So how often do you run into your old students around here? You must see them on a daily basis. Is it pretty much it?
Boy, oh boy.
And they're the students, right? Because they call you Mr. Bozzo, right? Instead of, even to this day, if I run into a teacher, here comes Jason.
I'm one of your students.
Jason's one of your students.
I went to kindergarten in Mansfield.
Oh, wow.
Here comes Jason when they walk in.
Just kindergarten, huh?
Just kindergarten.
What's your last name?
Bump.
Oh, I had a lot of bumps.
Yeah, he was a kid who ate crayons and sniffed markers, but everything else was good.
Oh, geez. I had to stop using paste after the first year of teaching because everybody liked it. I can remember liking it in third grade myself.
It tastes good, you mean?
Yep. So the mold would grow in there. And I gave the paste away to the classroom teachers.
Let them put them on their sandwiches.
Yeah, and we moved on to Elmer's glue.
So what have you been doing with your retired time now?
Oh, you know that. I do an awful lot of painting, an awful lot of artwork, and recently I've started doing photography and hiking too.
Yeah.
So really try to keep busy. This will sound like bragging, and maybe it is. The year of COVID, I framed almost 200 pieces, some paintings and some photographs.
That is a lot. Yeah.
I'm wrong. It's almost 300. It was 100 photographs and almost 200 paintings.
So your pictures available online for sale or to see, or how?
No, I post some pictures on Facebook, and when I'm feeling lazy, I don't post any on Facebook because a lot of former students are friends on Facebook, and they ask to purchase one. Or another thing I do small pieces with baby names on it, and different things for a young child, and a lot of former students ask me to do that for them.
Sure. So where's your favorite place to go to take photos in Tioga County? You have a favorite place?
Well,
Or is it a secret place?
No, I'm trying to do the entire Stony Fork Creek. Once you get below the Stony Fork Creek campground, it turns into public land. It goes 4.5 miles down to Babb Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And I have hiked along and photographed, I would say, about 75% of that. But there's still places I want to explore, because sometimes you're just blown away. I mean, the waterfalls are neat, and there's a lot of rocks, and there's a lot of deep and long pools. But there's one place where it's cut out under the bedrock, and there's these shelves about chest high beside you, and it's cut out underneath them on both sides of the creek. It's just that's a really strange place. And I can't remember where it was.
Well, within 4.5 miles.
So if I ever get this all done, I'd like to put it together in a book, draw my own map, and just a whole history kind of that. But when I post pictures from Stony Fork, there's a Facebook page called Tioga, PA, and there's one called Wellsboro. And if I post them in there, some people, this and this happened, and this happened there.
Mm-hmm.
One girl, I was up on this logging road high above the creek, high above the West Branch, actually. And she said her and her horse tumbled off of that road.
Yeah,
The trees had to stop them, but just some of the stories. So I don't know, if I had more writing skills, that'd be something to really write a book out.
There's so much neat little history hidden around Tioga County, and you'll never find it all. You just keep looking and finding these neat things and talking to people. And
Yep, exactly.
Well, any closing thoughts, Paul? Believe it or not, we've come to the end of our time here. Anything we missed or anything you want to mention?
Yeah, we missed the time the Port Allegheny Gators came to Wellsboro to play football, 1960.
That was your school team, the Gators, right?
Gators.
Yep.
No
Sounds like something
idea.
out of Florida, but okay.
Right. We came over. It was the third game of the season. It may have been the third weekend of September, and it was 99 degrees out. It was a record temperature for that day. Talk about global warming.
Mm-hmm. Precursor to it.
And we struggled through a heat-filled first half, 0-0. But our coaches before the game had assured us that Wellsboro was just starting a football program, and it would be an easy game. I found out since then Wellsboro was defeated in 1959. They even had a celebration in 2019 over here, a little bit of a celebration. So they were pretty tough. I played defensive end, but then was kind of like an outside linebacker. And with the end on the other side, we were both warned that Wellsboro liked to run a reverse. And when they ran it in the second half, everybody's running the other way because they're faking that way to the other end.
Yeah.
And the handoff, and this kid comes back. But I held my position. I dove to tackle him, came up with one leg. I'm holding on to one leg. Everyone is on the other side of the field chasing the wrong direction. I don't know how long I held on to that leg before help came.
You got towed right along, huh?
Yep, you're right. The kid was dragging me. I wouldn't let go.
Well, there you go. There's some history there. Well, Paul Bozzo, appreciate you sharing your story with us. And a lot of people know you from your days of art teaching and everything else. So I'm sure you'll get some great comments back on this.
Hey, it was fun, even though I was nervous. And I didn't stumble over too many words.
You did just fine.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
Well, thank you. It's
been a pleasure to know you, or to meet you, too.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you as well. It's all been brought to you by FCCB's local offices in Wellsboro, Mansfield, and Blossburg, serving our community for over 150 years, member FDIC. And if you missed any of today's program or any of our past programs, you can go to our YouTube channel. Easiest way is to go through our website, kc101fm.com. Click on Saturdays with Seniors, and